I have here a small line group that I am wiring up to provide some foreign exchange type service. Recently, we have been able to take an FXO ATA and connect some FXS ATAs to it across the internet, so that when a phone goes off hook on the remote ATA, it receives dial tone from my step switch. There's no delay. There is no audio being provided by the ATA, such as internally generated tones. It's simply a hotline from an FXS ATA to an FXO AT&T. There is an asterisk server in the middle due to the fact I don't have extra static IPs. Otherwise, we could do it without a unit in the middle. So this will be set up for 3 or 4 people to have dial tone from my step system. Due to the way my system is designed and wired and the different trunks that I have that can make calls outside of my system, I wanted a way of restricting what could be allowed access. So this particular 14-line group has its own 3 dedicated selectors, and those 3 selectors are wired only to access what I want within my central office. With that, I can control what can actually be dialed out of my system. The ATAs at the single line phone end will only work with a DTMF phone. We have not yet been able to get a rotary dial phone to work across the internet due to the fact that it's SIP, and it would become a store and forward dialing at that point. The way we have managed to make it work at this time is when you go off hook, you get my dial tone, and when you DTMF to me, it's coming across the internet right to my DTMF converter, which is then converting it to dial pulse. I do have telephone numbers wired up so that I can call any of the lines that we have in the camera and ring the far end ATA. Of course, I am sending a signal in a SIP format, and then the ATA is actually ringing the phone. So this is the closest we have been able to come up with as a pseudo copper pair over the internet. It works far better than anything I had ever imagined. So I have 3 line finders, 1, 2, and 3, and I have a test set connected, and I will go off hook. I need to manually step these because I've already gone off hook, and it would just give me dial tone instantly. So that gave me dial tone off of my first selector. So I will busy this link out so that it cannot be used, and I will go off hook on the second link. And now I have dial tone from the second of my 3 selectors. I will busy that link out, and then I should get the 3rd line finder. With that being said, at this point, due to the fact that these line finders do not rehome at the end of a call, when I go off hook again, I will be connected directly to the selector because it already found my line, and it's released the selector, but it did not set the line finder to go back to home. These rotary line groups did not do that. They were a very simple line group. Typically, these were used for coin phones, either prepay or dial tone first. This particular line group, when I acquired it, was used for what was called a Hobic trunk. These hotel-motel line groups would have dedicated trunks to customer, such as a small mom and pop hotel motel, which would have a manual type switchboard, or they could have even had a dial PBX, so that if a motel customer wished to originate a long distance call, they would contact the front desk and or dial a trunk code, and then they would land on a line, and then these trunks were connected to operator trunks, which then would show up on a cordboard switchboard in its day. Later it went to a TSPS. So then the operator would take care of the billing, and then when you hung up from the call, if the call was a completed answered call, they would call back that particular hotel motel operator and provide the information to the counter person so that they could bill you for the call when you checked out at the time you left the hotel establishment. It was a neat idea. I worked on a couple PBXs in my life that did have Hobic trunks, and of course I don't know what they charge for the calls, but I'm sure it was fairly expensive. Anyway, there's nothing unique about this unit, as in it's just a standard line group. I have many different line groups in this office, and this is the smallest one I have. I have 2 of them that's the same concept with 5 line finders and an additional 7 line strip to make it a full 21 lines for my payphones. This was something that I had no idea when I installed it in the office what I was going to do with it, and thanks to the advancements of the ATAs and today's software in 2020, we're actually able to provide a pseudo-type phone line across the internet. I envision in the future that there'll be improvements, and maybe someday we can get 2 ATAs that will accept dial pulse and send it across the internet in a packet form so we can do dial pulse. However, it would still be a store and forward at that point, which most users would never know it, but there would be a 1-digit delay for each digit dialed. Here are the 3 first selectors that is wired to that line group. Depending on what digit is dialed, you may or may not access a trunk. Since this is on its own wire bank, I have fairly good control over what can be dialed. I have modified these switches so that I can provide a restricted service, so that when you get into my 5th selectors, I block access to one particular group of connectors, which has the phones inside of my house. A close-up of one of the 3 line finders in operation. I only have 2 hands, so I can only operate the butt set and the camera simultaneously. The same operation would happen for the 2nd and 3rd finder if the first one was busy on an in-progress call. This is the line block at the mainframe. The 14 lines are wired to this block. I would jumper whatever phone number I assign to the ATA to this block. I have 7 connector groups available for assigning phone numbers out of.